The old man attacked Yeowoon with his telekinesis. Yeowoon tried to use his physical strength to break free of the old man. The old man was amazed by Yeowoon's resistance, so he grabbed his neck. Yeowoon realized that the old man was Baekho of the Poison Clan. The Poison Clan leader was surprised to see Yeowoon glaring at him while in a deathly situation. Baekho threw Yeowoon to the wall and immediately grabbed him back using his telekinesis. Yeowoon still glares at the Poison Clan leader, which made him uncomfortable. He asks him if he is trying to kill him, and if he was to disappear, the Poison Clan will be the first to be suspected. Baekho then told Yeowoon that the moment he went out of the academy, he will punish him with pain he can't even imagine. The Poison Clan leader then took out a bead from his bracelet and put it inside Yeowoon's mouth. He told Yeowoon that it's not a lethal poison, but if he tries to tell everyone what happened, he will activate the poison and kill him in an instant. He then throws Yeowoon again and leaves. Nano senses the foreign substance that entered Yeowoon's body. He then analyzed it and told Yeowoon that if you remove the poison, the remaining substance will be able to act like the medicine ball and boost his energy flow. Yeowoon told Nano to expel the poison in his body, then he meditate to absorb the remaining substance. Yeowoon saw a crack in the boulder he was thrown at. He tried to smash it, a hole was created, and he decided to go in it. He asked Nano to activate the night vision mode. While looking around, he saw a light at the end and followed the path. He arrived at a mysterious place and decided to look around. Yeowoon noticed the marks on the floor and asked Nano to activate the augmented reality with the monoliths at the library. Nano confirms that this is the place where the monoliths used to be. Yeowoon decides to look on the other side of the pole and was surprised when he saw the writing of Heavenly Demonic Sword Art. Yeowoon is confused if it's a breathing or a sword technique. He also wonders why he never heard of this. He asks Nano to scan the monolith and examine the handwriting if it's the same as the one in the library. Nano confirms that the writing is identical. Yeowoon recalls what the library guard said and realizes that he was referring to the Heavenly Demonic Sword Art. He then notices the holes in the monolith that resembles a rising dragon. He decides to sit down and thinks about the demonic sword art and if it has any connections to it. He then realizes that the dragon points at the ceiling. He asks Nano to adjust his eye's sensitivity. Yeowoon then saw that the luminous stone has some writings on them. He then asks Nano to scan the light stones and create a 3D model. He asks Nano to separate the one that has any relevance to martial arts. Nano then told him that he found 24 spheres with breathing techniques. He then examines the spheres and realizes that it's a breathing technique used to perform the Heavenly Demonic Sword Art. Yeowoon decides to try them, so he asks Nano to scan and transfer them to his brain. He then performs the demonic sword art using the breathing technique he found. He asks Nano how long he's been performing the techniques. Yeowoon was surprised when Nano told him that he already spent 2 hours practicing. What's more amazing is that he feels refreshed instead of fatigued. Nano told him that his energy flow became faster, and he then decided to try using his chi. He then confirms the changes in his energy flow. Yeowoon bowed to the monolith and thanked them for leading the technique. After 4 days, Yeowoon's group gathers and talks about the other squads. They analyzed the situation and counted the idea that only the head instructor has a yellow tag. They are thankful that Baekji decided to join them and offer his yellow tag to the team. After their meeting, they decided to have dinner. Baekji decided to skip dinner and head straight to the training facility. Wang Gul then also decided to skip so that he could watch over Baekji, but was stopped when Oh Zhang and Hyo Bong volunteered to accompany Baekji. While heading to the training facility, the three were surrounded by cadets that were being led by Ha-Il Myong. He then asks Baekji to hand over his yellow tag. Baekji analyzes their situation and concludes that he can't fight all of them. He talks to Oh Zhang through telepathy that he will pass him the name tag, so he must run as fast as he can. Realizing that they are communicating through telepathy, Il Myong ordered his groups to attack the three of them. Baek Ji immediately passed the yellow tag to Hyo Bong and images the cadets attacking them. He manages to hold them off, which gave an opening for Hyo Bong and Oh-jan to run. Seeing that Hyo Bong movements are a bit slow, Oh-jan asked him to pass the yellow tag. Hyo Bong then changes his direction and tried to bait the cadets after them. After a while, he realizes that no one actually is following him. He then decided to go to the cafeteria and seek the help of Won Gul and the others. They rushed outside and head straight to where Baek Ji and the others are. They were surprised to see Oh-jan faint lying on the ground and Baek Ji talking with Cheon Yunan. Won Gul tries to confront him, but Baek Ji stopped and told him that it wasn't him who beat them. Then Yunan decided to leave. Won Gul checked up Baek Ji if he was okay, while Hyo Bong is furious about what happened with Oh-jan. Baek Ji then told them what happened. Oh was caught and beaten mercilessly for not letting go of the yellow tag. Baek Ji was fighting Il Myung and was ganged by the other cadets. Then Yunan showed up and attacks Il Myung men. With his overwhelming strength, Il Myung decided to retreat. Losing their yellow tag, they decided to think of defeating the head instructor, but Baek Ji told them that it is impossible for them to defeat such a powerful foe. Won Gul told the rest of the team to believe in their leader. Hyo Bong then carried Oh-jan and decides to take him to the infirmary, but before leaving he told his teammates that he also believes in their leader, but it is not right to solely rely on him. He thinks that they should do something that fits their roles as retainers of their liege. The others were moved by what Hyo Bong said and decides to do their very best to at least be useful to their leader. The next morning, Yeowoon detention finally came to an end. The guards opened the boulder and were shocked to see the changes in Yeowoon. He then asks the guard about the remaining yellow tags. They told him that they're still available. Yeowoon already guessed who was the owner of the remaining yellow tags, so he told them that he wants to fight the head instructor right away. The guards then agree and told him to try not to get injured during the fight. Meanwhile, Hyo Bong's still trying to recruit cadets to join their team. He then saw the people gathering at the Demon Academy Hall. Hyo Bong then saw Yeowoon standing in the middle waiting for the head instructor. The two of them then bowed to each other. Then the head instructor asked Yeowoon if he wants to fight bare fist or with a wooden sword. Yeowoon chose to fight barehanded. The head instructor quickly takes his stance and let Yeowoon have the first strike. Yeowoon then dashes in and attacks his opponent. The head instructor was surprised by Yeowoon's speed but manages to evade and counterattack. Yeowoon then parried the attack. The head instructor was shocked by Yeowoon using a sword attack. The two continue exchanging blows. The head instructor was amazed at Yeowoon for nullifying his attacks. Seeing Yeowoon's strength, the opponents level up the difficulty and use demon sword techniques simultaneously. Yeowoon used the heavenly demonic sword art to counter the head instructor. Realizing that there's no way that he could defend against the attacks, the head instructor imbued himself with defensive ki. The head instructors realized that he should have died if they are using real swords. The head instructor decides to go all out but was stopped when someone sent a message using telepathy. He then acknowledges Yeowoon and gave him his yellow tag. Everyone was shocked at the head instructor's defeat. Hyo Bong approached and congratulates him, then Baek Ji kneeled down and thanked Yeowoon for saving him from being poisoned. He then swore his loyalty to Yeowoon and decides to follow him on his journey. The head instructor heads to the roof to meet Won Myung and asks him about the technique that Yeowoon used. He recognizes the heavenly demonic sword art and wonders how Yeowoon learned it, since it was only passed to leaders of the demon cult. Won Myung then told the head instructor to keep it a secret. While still celebrating his win over the instructor, Ho Sang-hwa approached Yeowoon and asks him to accept her on his team. Jin-guk also asks Yeowoon to accept him as one of his teammates. Yeowoon asks his group about the missing retainers, so Won Gul asks his leader to talk in private. They explained to their leader what happened during his detention. Then Yeo-woon noticed that Oh-jang is missing. Everyone fell silent, so he asked them to tell them what happened. After hearing the story, Yeo-woon decided to take revenge for Oh-jang. Meanwhile, at Cheon Yunnan was talking to a cadet about their deal on obtaining Baek-gi. Cheon Yunnan promised to give them yellow tags if they managed to complete the task. Due to their failure, Yunnan decided to give chance to Yum-pa. He went to Il Myung to seek his help. Yum-pa explains that he plans to eliminate Yeo-woon's group in the third trial. Il Myung agreed to help Yum-pa, and they immediately went to look for Yeo-woon's group. Meanwhile, Yeo-woon and his group are having a meeting in the forest when Il Myung and Yum-pa suddenly appeared and threatened them. But both of them were surprised when Yeo-woon thanked them for coming. Then some of the cadets that were with Yum-pa changed sides and asked Il Myung and Yum-pa to drop their weapons. For hours ago, Pyong Mak and his teammate are talking on what they should do to get a yellow name tag. In the middle of their conversation, Yeo-woon and his group appeared and confronts them. Seeing Yeo-woon's group, some other cadets doesn't want to get involved due to Yeo-woon's infamous record in the academy. Yeo-woon attacks Pyong Mak for insulting him. The cadets were shocked when they saw their leader getting flown in one hit. Hyo-ban beat the cadet who's responsible for Oh-jang's injuries. Then Baek-gi stops him and asks the cadet what they are planning. The cadet then told him that they were ordered by Cheon Yunnan to get their yellow name tag. Then Hyo-ban continued on hitting him, and this time it was Won-gul who stopped him and told him that he has the plan to bait them all out. Won-gul attacks them psychologically. He asked him if he really believed Cheon Yunnan words. He told them that with their numbers he should have promised him 2 yellow name tags, but cadets doist recall Yunnan saying that they will hand them 2 tags. The cadets heard this and started to argue when they realized that they were being played by Yunnan. Won-gul succeeded in his scheme and asked them if they want to get revenge. Yum-pa tried to reason out with the cadet, but he was stunned when he was asked if Yunnan will give them 2 name tags. In the middle of their conversations, Yeo-woon attacks Yum-pa. He manages to dodge the attack, then Il Myung decided to join the fight. Il Myung tried to attack Yeo-woon with his wooden sword. He was surprised when his sword was caught and breaks, even imbuing it with ki. Baek-gi then kicks his side and told him that he will be his opponent. Because of Yeo-woon overpowered their leader, the other cadets decided to flee. Won-gul and the others decided to join the fight. Yum-pa realizes that there was nothing more he can do, so he bowed down to the ground and surrendered. Yeo-woon then grabs his head and smashes it on the ground. Seeing Yum-pa getting punished, the other cadets decided to surrender. Yeo-woon approached Il Myung, who was silenced by Baek-gi. He broke his fingers one by one. The others cadets started to get nervous, for they know they were going to be next. Yeo-woon slapped Il Myung, which made him faint. Then he orders his team to break all the fingers and one leg of every member of Il Myung's group. Il Myung then used a technique that made him berserk and attacks Yeo-woon. He easily beats him, even though with the increase in his strength. Yeo-woon then decided to attack Cheon Yunnan, and the other cadets joined to help them. In the afternoon, Cheon Yunnan and his group were practicing their formations. The unmasked man with the voice of Yum-pa appeared and brought the Il Myung and Yeo-woon's group beaten bodies. Yunnan then asks who is the other beaten guy with a mask. He told him that it was Yeo-woon. Yunnan then asks how they beat Yeo-woon. He explains that it's due to Il Myung using the blood reversal technique. Thinking that it was Yeo-woon on the ground, Yunnan then cut his arm to eliminate him in the Battle of the Airs. Yunnan removes the mask and was surprised that it was Yum-pa all along. Then the other masked guy attacks him by surprise, but pushed him back. He then removes his mask and reveals himself as Yeo-woon. He told his teammates to stand up. The other cadets were surprised that they were played by Yeo-woon's scheme. One of Yunnan's team leaders attacks Yeo-woon but failed to connect any hits. Yeo-woon manages to snatch his yellow tag while fighting him when suddenly Nano warns him about an energy forming behind him. He then immediately told his team to get down, then he parried it with his chi blade. Yeo-woon realizes that it was Yunnan. He told him that he was trying to get revenge for his surprise attack. Yeo-woon mocks him by saying that it took him a long time to wake up. Yunnan then disappears and attacks Yeo-woon with the Phantom Blade Strike. Yeo-woon used his Chi Blade to block the attack. Cheon Yunnan continues to attack and use the curving sword technique. Yeo-woon was surprised but still manages to block it. Cheon Yunnan told Yeo-woon to start using his butterfly dance technique. He then challenges him with 5 techniques. Yeo-woon then proposed a bet if Yunnan can defeat his incomplete sword technique in 5 moves. Yunnan then told him that he will also take Baek Ji if he wins. He then asked Yeo-woon to attack him. Yeo-woon dashes and attacks. Cheon Yunnan used the Phantom Blade Wisp technique. Yunnan was surprised by Yeo-woon's continuous attacks. He noticed that as the attack continues, the more powerful it gets. Cheon Yunnan tried to use the demonic Phantom Blade 5th technique but was surprised when Yeo-woon was already in front of him. Yeo-woon then used a whirlwind-like attack that halted Yunnan movements. He then continuously attacks Yunnan and manages to cut Cheon Yunnan's right arm. Yeo-woon won the bet and asked Yunnan to hand him over the yellow tags. Yunnan asks Yeo-woon how did he manage to perform a great attack by only using the 7 Demon Sword technique. Yeo-woon then replied, if that is what he thinks, then he is nowhere strong enough to be discussing sword techniques. Cheon Yunnan group handed over their yellow name tags. Yeo-woon then punched him, saying that he learned from Yunnan to never leave loose ends. He ordered his groups to capture Cheon Yunnan's groups and break their arms and legs. Yeo-woon then gave 2 yellow name tags to the cadets that helped them in their scheme. Realizing Yeo-woon's greatness, they bowed down and asked him to accept them in their group. Back at the director's office, Hwa Myung was examining Hwa Il-mayan's body. He fixed the flow of his energy, which made him woke up. Hwa Myung then asks him how did he learn the reverse blood demonic technique. Il-mayang tried to deny it, then Hwa Myung lifted him using telekinesis. He started torturing Il-mayang to make him speak. He then reveals that they know about the relationship of their clan being the Shadow of the Sword clan. Being cornered, Il-mayang decided to take his own life. Back at the cafeteria, most of the cadets now are trying to join Yeo-woon's group. Yeo-woon then repeated his intention of renewing the current cult. Some of them left, but this time a lot have stayed. Then a mysterious man appeared and tried to speak with Yeo-woon. One of his retainers then told him that he must recruit him, for he is Moon-gyu, is the grandson of the 9th Council Elder of the Dark Dragon Palm clan. The peak of the cult is the Lord, and there are 12 councils under him. The first 6 are the main clans, and the others rose to power because of their power and skills. The 9th Elder is one of those clans that was made to be an elder due to his achievements and contributions. He also has a good faction in his clan that is said to rival the main 6 clans. That's why Moon-gyu is one of the targets of the Vice Lord's candidate. Yeo-woon's group were wondering why Moon-gyu is limping, so he told them that Yunnan asked him to join his team, but he refused. Then Yunnan suddenly assaulted him and broke his arm and leg. He then kneeled down and asked Yeo-woon to accept him even having injuries. Yeo-woon asks him if he has any intentions of joining him on his journey, or if he simply wants to be a group member. Moon-gyu then told Yeo-woon that he wanted to join for now and then decide later if he will be one of his retainers. Yeo-woon refuses and explains that it will be unfair to those cadets he rejected. He then asks him why is he so desperate to join his group. Yeo-woon asked Nano to start the facial analysis. He was surprised when Nano told him that he was unable to activate the facial analysis. Nano told him that Moon-gyu's face was covered with artificial skin. Yeo-woon then realizes that he is wearing a mask and wonders why he's trying to hide his face. Nano then analyzes his body and told Yeo-woon that she is a woman. Seeing Yeo-woon looking at his ear and neck, she had a hunch that Yeo-woon already knew her secret, so she immediately decided to be his retainer. Later that night, behind the expert training facility, Yeo asked Moon-gyu why she hid her identity. She told him about his mother dying and giving birth to her brother, and that the main 6 clans want to have a bond with their clan, so they send some matchmakers. So she decided to enter the academy while posing as a man. Moon-gyu then asks Yeo-woon to promise not to tell everyone about his mask. She then removes her mask to reapply some glue and asks him to help her. Yeo-woon was struck by his beauty. He then held Moon-gyu's mask while she applied some glue. She then puts it back and decides to back to the dormitory. The next morning, 7th day of the 3rd trial, Yeo-woon's group went to the main building and reported their possession of yellow tags. They were officially recognized as group leaders for the 3rd test. After breakfast, Yeo-woon decided to teach his teammates the demon sword techniques. Everyone was shocked when Yeo-woon told them their mistakes individually despite performing all together. After the training, Yeo-woon decided to put up a hierarchy, so he decided to form the 6 swords that will rival the 6 main clans in the future. Baek-ji then suggested that there should be a ranking in the 6 swords too. So the 6 candidates decided to fight each other. Moon-gyu decided to give up and be the 6th sword due to her injuries. Then Won challenges everyone. Ho-sang and So-young attacked him together. Baek-ji and Taek-jiam introduce themselves and decide to have a duel. One goal manages to the 2 ladies. But because of a lack of teamwork, So-young and Ho-sang ended up fighting each other. So-young manages to put Ho-sang out of balance, but when she was about to attack, Ho-sang managed to counter and smashed her to the ground with that the 5th sword was decided. Then Won goal but in at Baek-ji fight the 2 of them blocks and complemented their attacks. Then Taek-gwan tried to attack them while being occupied, but still both Won Gul and Baek-ji manages to dodge. Taek-jiam sensed Ho-sang at her back and manages to avoid the attack, but she was caught by Won Gul's punch and Baek-ji kick. Then the 4th sword was decided. The remaining 3 tried to duke it out, but Ho-sang gave up due to a lack of stamina. Baek-ji and Won Gul go at each other. Baek-ji then manages to land a hit and continues to attack Won Gul with flurries of kicks, which made Won Gul accept his defeat. With that, the ranks of the 6 swords were established. Through annual competitions, the ranking can be changed. The 6 strong will be rewarded as the 6 swords. The next day at the Grand Martial Arts Training Ground, Yeo-woon is glad to see his team brimming with confidence. Hwa-myung appeared to announce that there is a change in the 3rd trial. The instructors then drop real swords for them to use. Prisoners then were brought to the training hall. Hwa-myung told them that the trial was changed to true combat experience. He told them that the prisoners were guaranteed their freedom if they managed to defeat them. Sakma-chuk was the first one to take the test. They managed to kill the prisoner, but only 7 of them managed to pass the test. Yeo-woon realized that the test depends on individual performance. The next one is Cheon-moo-gweum. He manages to pass the test but loses most of his men. Cheon-moo-young group was the only one that manages to pass without losing cadets. Hwa-myung realizes that the 6 main clans are after Yeo-woon after defeating their heirs. It was Yeo-woon's turn. Hyo-bong is a bit scared of their opponent even though they haven't released his restraints yet. While the head instructor released his pressure point, Yeo-woon noticed the prisoner that he was looking for someone. The head instructor then told Yeo-woon to be careful. When the trial started, the man turns at Yeo-woon and says that he found him. Thank you. Please like and subscribe.